Hey guys, Ani here. Welcome back. We're about to check out the breakdown from Heavy Spoilers for episode 5 of The Last of Us. This episode was fantastic, man, and there's some changes, some tweaks, but aside from that, it was so spot on where it needed to be. It was wild, man. If you haven't seen my reaction to the episode, please go check it out. But in the meantime, if you're not subscribed to Heavy Spoilers, please go do so. I think they have the best breakdowns for this show, and I highly recommend them over here, man. But with that all said, we got a long video here, so we're going to be going through this together. Here we go.
So The Last of Us episode 5 is now out, and in this video we're going to be recapping the plot, breaking down the Easter eggs, and also talking about the game's similarities and differences.
Endure and survive.
Endure and survive.
Excuse me.
As always, this review won't contain spoilers until the end of the video, and that'll be for people who've completed both parts. Now we hop right off the back of last week, which saw the introduction of Sam and Henry. We theorized last time that they'd followed Joel and Ellie, and this is how they randomly ended up on the same floor as they did in the skyscraper. This is confirmed in the episode, and theory time, right? And the entry centers around fleshing out their backstory along with Kathleen's. On the podcast,
He nailed that, man. And I when I was watching the video, I was like, I don't know if I would have clicked with me while watching this week's episode. It was like, oh, they had to have followed them. My brain was like, oh, it was probably just a coincidence or something like that. But yeah, man.
As for the show, the creators stated that she's like Madame Dufarge from A Tale of Two Cities, and she's this very meek character who ends up becoming a vengeful ringleader set on getting revenge for the death of her family. Now, last week we missed that Tommy's voice actor Jeffrey Pierce was playing the part of Perry, and that Sam's gun actually didn't have any bullets in the chamber. Eagle-eyed viewers spotted that there were 2 bullets in there, but that he'd need to pull the trigger 4 times in order to shoot Joel. Now in the game, the pair's origin wasn't as fleshed out as it is here, in that their QZ in Hartford had been abandoned by the military, and fearing that it could cause danger for Sam, Henry led him out of there with some other survivors. They traveled into Pittsburgh searching for supplies, and this is when they were split from the group by a bunch of raiders. They'd all agreed to rendezvous at a radio tower, which is when we learn in the game that Sam was bit, and the events played out much like what we get at the end of the episode. There's several nods to your journey with Sam and Henry laced throughout the entry, and we sort of get a compressed version of it with us having the office building, Ish in the sewers, the sniper section that you play through, and the infected that then swarm the area. Sam and Henry were great.
How do you guys feel about that change? I actually get why they did it thematically, because again, like with what they're doing with the Joel-Ellie relationship and what they did with Frank and Bill, these little changes so far have been made to reflect Joel's character in the world. Even Kathleen is a reflection of Joel in some way. We're seeing so many different avenues, seeing so many different characters that are all like could be potential venues or avenues or directions that Joel's life could go, given whatever decision he might make. And I think tying Henry into this shows a different perspective, because once Sam's life was in danger, how far was he willing to go to save Sam's life? What is Joel going to do? What is he capable of? You know, it's an interesting change, because other than that, I mean, you still have some of that connection there as well, but Henry's blanket backstory in the game is just like he said. You know, they came from a QZ that they left in Hartford, and they were coming down. This group of raiders, which here is represented by Kathleen and her group, just kind of shook them up, tried to rob them, take them down, you know, steal their supplies, and their group got split apart. And they're just trying to get from point A to point B. It's as simple as that. And then all this stuff kind of happens in the interim. So it's not as thematically linked in to like Joel and Ellie. They're just some people that show up. But I am going to hit play, because I've been rambling too much.
But the episode very much elevates them, showing that they're willing to do dark things in order to survive. They're of course a reflection of Joel and Ellie, with them both sharing the same kinds of dynamics. Now here we get the inner workings of how they were part of Kathleen's team, and we learn that Henry sold out her older brother to Fedra. This created an uprising, and the group overthrew Fedra, which meant that Henry and Sam had to go into hiding in order to escape them.
So in a way, Henry gave them exactly what they wanted. The revolt was triggered by the death of her brother, the way that it sounds. Would they have rose up if he just kind of was left alone? Would they have had that push? Maybe they should be thanking Henry.
Now we start off the episode with the people celebrating the disintegration of Fedra. A flare is shot up into the sky like a firework, and the people then shout freedom. Again, we have the We the People truck, and in case you missed our last video, we pointed out on that it has roots in the Constitution. It's the first 3 words that appear in it, and it's very much the people believing that they've created their own independence. We also theorize that this could be a nod to Taxi Driver due to the saying "we are the people" appearing in that, and Ellie's opening scene that happens in the mirror. Either way, with all the uprisings come bloodshed, and the celebrations are juxtaposed by the dead Federal soldiers that now line the street. Those that are still living are brutally murdered, and the sigil for them is presented with a fire beneath, hinting at the crumbling of this era. I've always been a bit
some
hit
nice
and miss on the
symbology
hate for
there.
Fedra, as they did manage to stabilize America by creating safe zones for the people. Episode 1 showed that though they killed the infected without question, they tried to do it in a nice way, but as with all authorities, there are those that within that can be corrupted and evil. This was showcased in episode 3, in which we know that they murdered some evacuees in case they became infected. In the game's counterpart Pittsburgh, you learn that the rebels did what they did here, and can piece enough things together to learn why this was. There's graffiti on federal buildings complaining about how people are being starved, and when food ran low, obviously they kept the rations for themselves. Now the trucks roam the streets looking for collaborators, and over the tannoy we can hear they'll offer fair trials. This is clearly a f***ing lie though, as we see Kathleen ordering several collaborators to be executed in the next scene. I feel this is riffing on real world politics, and after the Second World War, several Nazi collaborators were hunted down. Throughout, Henry's called a rat, and Joel refuses to work with him initially because he doesn't want to associate with someone who f***ed over his own people to get a leg up with Fedra. In the game, you had a really tense moment where they left you up shit's creek without a paddle, and I love how this uneasy alliance also carries over into the show. We then see a body being dragged behind a truck, and this has several knives in it. This is complete overkill, obviously, and potentially done for a reason to show all those that were involved in taking down Fedra. When Julius Caesar was killed, he was stabbed 23 times, and this was done to show each of the perpetrators had a hand in it and that they were all in it together. This episode very much feels like the same sort of thing, with the rebels showing that they're willing to get their hands dirty in order to overthrow Fedra. In a change-up from the game, we learn that Sam is deaf, and thus he talks to Henry in sign language and has a little magic board he can write on. This adds even more to just how vulnerable he is, and it clearly shows why Henry feels like he has to protect his brother. Subtitle text is also done to mimic how it appears in the game, and the font they use is exactly the same as it is in that. Now we jump to Kathleen interrogating the collaborators, and one of them gives up Dr. Edelstein, who we learned last week was killed by Kathleen, or was it the next week? Anyway, lots of timey-wimey wibbly-wobbly stuff, and she says that they'll be executed if they don't give up Henry and Sam, but even when they do, she still wants them wiped out. This really speaks to her character, and how she refuses to let her brother's death go unavenged. Her right-hand man Perry asks why the pair are such a priority, as the city's still in a state of destabilization. Now we learn from Henry that the infected were driven underground 15 years ago, but they've clearly been awakened once more by the revolution happening on the surface. Kathleen doesn't care though, and she's willing to throw everything she has to make sure the characters are caught. As we learned last week, this involved overlooking a hole in the ground teeming with infected, and this short-sightedness eventually leads to her downfall and the end of her people. Throughout the video, ironically, she was talking about kids not, maybe kids shouldn't be in this world or whatever. She was saying maybe Sam should die or whatever. And I think I saw somebody mention this in the comments. I'm sorry, I don't remember any names from that, but there was somebody that mentioned in the comments, and it's a great little catch, that after that speech she gave to Henry about Sam, the clicker that got her was the child. Poetry. Videos, we've talked about how the showrunners have constantly brought up the theme of love on the podcast, and this is something that's definitely seen in Kathleen. Love can be good, as in the case of Bill and Frank, but it also can have hugely negative effects. Kathleen loved her brother, and losing him has caused her to hunt down all those involved in his demise at the expense of others. Now,
I'll talk about it at the end.
Overthrowing Fedra, she's pretty much become the thing that she sought to replace, and there's a little line that hints towards this.
Burn the bodies, it's faster.
This is of course what we saw Joel doing for Fedra in episode 1, and it showcases how they're both different wings of the same bird. It's possible that we actually saw the collaborators' bodies, and if you cast your mind back to episode 4, then you'll remember there was a pile of them when Joel and Ellie drove through the town. This moment pulled from the
right.
game, and in that Ellie said that they weren't infected. Them giving up the doctor is very on brand as well, because they've obviously been working with Federer and are now betraying people in order to survive another day. Now we see as Henry and Sam end up meeting with the doctor, who hides them in an attic, similar to how Anne Frank and her family hid out during the Holocaust. Last week, Kathleen discovered it abandoned with empty tins of food, and in this entry, we see what happened during the time that they were laying low. We see Sam drawing his character Super Sam, and last week we got a tease to this with him wearing his orange face paint. Now, I think one of the running themes throughout The Last of Us is how every character's childhood has been stripped away because of the way the world is. Humans could easily be a united force against the infected, but everyone fights amongst themselves, and those children don't really get to live. Come the end of this episode, we now have 3 dead kids in the series, and this comes in the form of Sarah, the child of the QZ, and of course Sam. Ellie initially seems to be enjoying this world, and though she's making the most of it, she's not really seen as a kid either. Described as being cargo, she's just someone who can help create a vaccine, and thus she isn't really viewed as a person. I've said this in other breakdowns, but children are our future, and having so many of them dying means there's no hope for the human race. Humanity has stumbled on for 20 years, but when the kids start dying, it won't be the infected that get us, it'll be the fact that there's no one to carry on the species. Really poignant stuff, and we see 10 days going by with the pair hiding out.
He gets it.
Sam had it so drilled into his head that Federer were the enemy that even this is reflected in the artwork, with the drawings looking like how the soldiers do in the game and show.
Yeah, that's kind of one thing I thought too. I was like, this is some, I know it's like haha tee superhero stuff, but he's killing people in his drawings.
In another nod to the game, we see Henry looking out the window, and off in the distance we can catch a yellow bridge. Though this section took place in Pittsburgh, in the source material, you and the group had to make your way to a similar one in order to get out of the town. Eventually, Joel and Ellie ended up having to jump off it, and this happened after they were chased by the run truck. On the shore, they were saved by Henry and Sam, who abandoned them when a ladder broke during the chase with the truck. At this point, you then pass through the sewers, which we'll talk more about in just a bit when we get to the hideout section. Now, Sam is worried that the doctor isn't coming, and as we know, he was captured by Kathleen. He told Henry to stay strong so that his brother wouldn't worry, but we can clearly see that this is weighing on him. Finally, he decides to accept the truth that he's not coming back, and the pair head out to take their chances in the city. Also worth noting that Sam has a yellow hoodie on at this point, and this is the same thing that he wore in the original game. Henry gives him some orange face paint, which wasn't in the source material, and this is a nice little touch to add to his character.
Yeah.
In the game, you stop by a toy store to hide out from the truck, and Sam wanted to take a robot toy with him. Henry said no because it would just take up space, and again, it showed that kids couldn't be kids in this world.
Sam, what are you doing?
Nothing.
Get rid of it.
My backpack is practically empty.
What's the rule about taking stuff?
It weighs like nothing.
The rule. What is it?
We only take what we have to.
Ellie took it in the end, and after making it to the radio tower, she did give it to Sam as a little present. Much like the episode, he turned the next day, but she kept this toy in her backpack as a reminder of him. Henry ends up checking the street, and this is when we see the action scene from last week, in which Joel crashed his truck and had to shoot it out with the rebels. I did go back and watch this scene again to see if we could spot Henry, but unfortunately, we can't. Now, we do get the moment where Joel finishes the shooting, lowers his gun, and looks in that direction, but it's clear that he doesn't actually see him. Seeing him as a way to safety, Henry ends up following the pair, and this eventually brings everything full circle from last week. In a nice bit of attention to detail, you can also see that Henry has a giant flashlight on his backpack, and this is in line with the one that he also had in the game. And now we then go to the alleyway, in which Ellie climbed through the vent, and the pair don't have to do this because she unlocked the door. They also go straight up the staircase and step on the glass.
Man, it's so good, dude.
However, as we discovered in episode 4, he's going deaf in one ear, and this is why he lay on one side every time he went to sleep. Also worth noting that in episode 1, he didn't hear Tess entering, tying back to this whole deafness thing going on with him. The gameplay seems differently,
nice. That's a good point.
Chased by the run truck, you have to shimmy along a walkway, and this is when you jump through a window and are grabbed by Henry. He thinks you're a raider, but upon seeing Ellie, he realizes that you're not with them. In camps where Pedro were overthrown, they tend to either kill or outcast the kids because they just slow the others down.
Where are you from?
All the way from Hartford.
Really? I heard some bad stuff going on down there.
Yeah, the military abandoned the zone. That's why we left. The place probably looks like this by now.
This is a major reason why Henry ended up leaving Hartford, as he knew Sam would probably be murdered by the group that took over the military's place. Joel almost beat Henry to death, which is when Sam stepped in with a gun drawn similar to what we get here. Henry likely realizes that they're in a similar situation, just an adult trying to escort a kid through a hazardous city. Now they end up sharing food, and this obviously means a lot in this new world. Survivors have to be even more careful because food was how the cordyceps spread, and thus given the limited amount of food that they have to be more tight with it. Now we get a scene that sort of riffs on one from the game, in which they sit about surveying the area. In the original, Henry ended up taking Joel and Ellie to their hideout, which was located in an office block across the city. In the game, they of course want to make levels and sections for you to fight through, whereas in the show, they're not really needed, so you can just skip it and put the scenes in the same location. Now you went into one of these rooms, and it had a similar sort of layout to what we see in the show. The game had Henry's hideout located just above the gate that was in front of the entrance to the bridge, and under the cover of nightfall, you ended up launching your plan to pass it. Here they do things differently, and they look over the city and point out the exits. Henry says he's never killed anyone, and though this is technically true, we do learn that he caused someone else's death. Now though it's all serious with Henry and Joel, Sam and Ellie at least have some fun. We catch her reading the pun book to him, and get some similar moments in the show and game.
Wait, I have another one.
Wow.
All right, ready?
Ow!
A blueberry hurt you?
It's been a while since that boy even cracked a smile.
Oh, it's so fucking cute, man.
Haven't heard that in a long time.
In the game, Henry and Sam were actually making their way to the Fireflies, and Joel said,
Oh, it just seems like there's a lot of people putting their stock on the Fireflies these days.
Yeah, maybe there's a reason for that.
So you don't know where they are, and you're just gonna drag him across the country to find them?
This was ironic as well, because he was of course making his way across the country without really knowing where they were either. Anyway, Henry draws up a map of the city and tells them that they're going to be heading through the maintenance tunnels. Henry wants Joel to help him navigate these, as they could still have infected in them. Henry actually calls a clicker a clicker, and you know what? It's nice to see a live action thing, not embarrassed by the terminology that they use in the games.
God, I hate that shit so much. That made me so happy just to hear it in the show. And this.
He says that someone he knew from Fedra said they'd been cleared out, but there is still a possibility that some might be down there, and he and Sam won't be strong enough to deal with them. Only he knows this though, and the theory is that Kathleen won't follow them because of the danger there could be. Now they head into another building, and this resembles the one that you first move into when you storm the gate. However, here they head underground, which is when they discover what was really going on. We get this line.
Dad's kind of a pessimist.
He's not my dad.
Which is a nod to...
This is just you and your daughter.
We're not related. We're more like,
I promised someone I'd look after her.
Yeah, I can appreciate that.
Now, as we mentioned earlier, this is basically combining the sewer section of the game so that it's part of Kansas. As we stated, Joel and Ellie jumped off the bridge, and this is when they were pulled ashore by Henry and Sam. You found a boat washed up along with some notes and a home in the sewer that was once teeming with people. Children were of course killed by the bandits, and thus they fled here with their parents to try and carve out a life. I was going to say that something like this might have happened here, but Joel says that lots of people went underground on Outbreak Day. It's possible that people ended up lying low here, and then when the infected were pushed underground, they wiped them out because they'd bottled themselves in.
Oh, that's a good point. Ew, that's worse.
This is drawn to look like a castle, and this is something that also pops up in the game when you first enter the sewers. Anyway, when they enter the room, there are several things here that are ripped right out of the source material. Now, against the back wall, we can see a goal drawn onto it, and there was an optional cutscene in which Ellie played football against Sam. Yes, I'm saying football again. I'm not saying soccer. I've had enough for you guys. I've had no. You can probably hear I'm very ill at the moment, so the thumbs up is much appreciated, and I hope it doesn't ruin the video for you like it's ruined my life making these videos for you. I hate you. Now this plays out in a scene similar to what we get here.
Yes! Come on! Yeah!
awesome. Calm down. Hey, Sam.
Yeah.
Stand with us close over.
Okay.
Ready?
Oh, Henry. Did you see that? Let's keep it down, buddy, okay?
To me, this always made Ellie ever closer to Sarah, because Sarah also played soccer when she was a child. Hey, I said soccer for you guys out there, you suckers.
See you, chump.
Now, we do get a little subtle gesture by Joel here, and he looks down at his watch after looking at Ellie. This is something that Sarah, of course, gave
keeps
him,
doing
and
it,
looking
man.
at the watch reminds him of the daughter he lost. He also did this in episode 2, and as we know, it doesn't work. So it's not like he's
That's
using
the
it
only.
to read
That's
what
not the only
time is.
time, though.
It just shows
That's not the
how
only
much
time
Ellie
he's done
reminds
it.
him of Sarah, and moments like this say so much with so little. There's a slide which I think was in the game, and also a big sign that says house rules. When you made your way through the underground, you could spot this, and the rules on both are identical. They say, make sure doors are locked, ask for password if you don't know the visitor, no shouting and noisy play, run to hiding spot when you hear the alarm. Now in the game, you accidentally set off one of the alarms, which alerted the infected. They had bottles inside a box on the end of a rope, and setting this off showed them where you were. We also see blue barrels with tubes popping out the top of them, and we learn in the game that these were used to collect rain so that they had a supply of water. Now in what's my favourite Easter egg from the show so far, we see a child's drawing with Danny and Ish on the wall. This is identical to how it appears in the game, and you come across it when traversing the sewers. Now why is this my favourite Easter egg? I mean, the picture, yeah, it looks completely but Ish, yeah, he actually has an extensive backstory that you discover through notes that you find throughout the sewers. Ish is a great subplot in the game, and he's based on the character Isherwood Williams from the 1949 book Earth Abides, in that there was also a pandemic, and the character ended up establishing a community of survivors like what we see here. He was meant to look like Ishmael from Moby Dick, and this idea of being a sailor carried across to the game. After the outbreak, he went to sea for several months, but eventually he had to go to shore, and he landed near Pittsburgh. This is the boat that you encounter after the bridge, and it's here that you discover the first part of his story. We learn that he ended up going into the sewers, and it's here that he constructed a safe house. Desperate for food, Ish ended up going into the suburbs behind them, which is where he came across a family of other survivors. Though they initially just traded supplies, Ish ended up inviting them down into the sewers, which is where they built a community. Unfortunately, someone didn't follow the rules, and they left the door unlocked, which is when the infected broke in. By the time you got there, it was completely abandoned, and it was a horrifying event for those stuck inside. One of the notes said that the teachers barricaded themselves in a nursery with some of the other children, and had to, well, do what happened at the end of the mist. You know that ending.
Yeah.
I guess you could say,
I forgot
life's
about
an
all
Ish
of that,
and then
man.
you die. Hey. Now, Ish actually made it, and he and some of the other survivors fled into the suburbs, which is the next area the characters go into in both the show and game. I was wondering if this old guy was actually him, but let's hope not. Now, on top of this, we also see that Sam has a savage...
I would say probably not, given the guy had a radio. I mean, he could have been listening in on Kathleen to avoid her, maybe that, but it definitely, I don't know. She was like giving an order to keep them busy or something. I don't know if that was to him. He could be tapped into the radio signal. I don't know. Maybe, but I just kind of doubt it.
Savage Star-like comic. These were collectibles in the game, and they told the story of Dr. Daniela Starr, who could travel faster than light. The cover here is pulled directly from the PlayStation counterpart, and this is the accretion issue brought across from it. In the second game, the comics expanded beyond just being comics, and you also collected trading cards of characters from the story. This included Dr. Uckman, who was based on Neil Druckmann, aka the game and series creator. Ellie also says this catchphrase,
To the edge of the universe and back.
To the edge of the universe and back. Endure and survive.
Excuse me?
Endure and survive.
And you know, I really enjoy these moments with them just getting
Me
to be
too,
kids,
man.
as it's something that we haven't really seen that much in the show. Now, when they take the comic out the bag, we can also catch the book Two Old Potatoes and Me. This centers around a girl whose parents are going through a divorce, and she builds a relationship with her father whilst the pair grow new potatoes from some old ones. Initially, the girl finds the potatoes in the cupboard, and she thinks they're gross, but over the book, she learns their new opportunities. From them, they can grow something new, and this is similar to her parents' divorce, enabling her to have a different but new type of life. Now, this is very much reflected in Joel and Ellie, who are making something
That's
new
a
in this
deep
world that's
fucking
falling
pull
apart
there,
around
man.
them. Now, we don't have any sponsors this week, but we have just launched a new t-shirt over at our Shop Zero edition. The Last of Us inspired real fungi top massively helps out the channel, and it helps us to pay for staff, our overheads, and everything so we can just bring you deep dives like this. I really appreciate all your support anyway, and just you dropping comments really means a lot to me as it helps boost these videos. But if you want to give something more, then the link to the site is in the description below, and definitely head over there to get some cool merch that massively helps us out. Thank you. Now it's at this point they decide to wait a couple of hours, and then they decide to make their move. This causes a bit of time difference from the source material, as you arrived in the suburbs and played out the sniper section during the middle of the day. Here though it happens at night, and this is because you don't really travel through the sewers. Now Joel and Henry talk it out, and he apologizes for saying he's a rat. However, Henry reveals what really happened with Kathleen's brother. The way he describes him, he sounds like the second coming of Mr. Beast, and I bet he's the kind of person who would always like, comment and subscribe, even if the host's voice didn't sound as good as it normally does. Anyway, Henry says that Sam got sick with leukemia, and thus he had to work with Pedro to get a special drug that was in short supply. Little did Henry know, this pushed the resistance over the edge, and we ended up getting what we see in Kansas City. Henry gave up someone amazing that could have led the people into a new world for the life of someone he loved, and we'll talk later on about how this thematically repeats through the show, in that super spoiler section.
Yeah, okay, I can't wait to see what he says there.
Father, and similar to him, he'd of course do anything to protect the ones he loves. Cut to Kathleen, and we see her in the room that she grew up in with her brother. This is adorned with ornaments and also kids playing football. Again, tying back to this photo of Sarah. Check the analytics. Our biggest audience is America. They were playing soccer. Now Perry returns.
We
with
win!
Some bad news. Joel and Henry are still at large, with there being no sign of them in the city. Kathleen reveals that her brother's name was Michael, and it's possible that he was a Firefly due to a dog tag that we find with that name on in the game. Might be a reach yet, but
maybe.
Michael likely gave people hope that there was a different way of life, and this is of course something that the Fireflies also do. The idea of him giving people optimism.
I mean, it's a fair theory, man.
He tells a story about how they used to change their rooms using their imagination.
He was so beautiful.
There was constant gunfire, screaming and bombing in the town, but
the choice of cutaway clips, man, I love it.
Michael likely did that to everyone growing up, and it really makes you question whether Sam's life was worth his. Obviously, you don't want to be killing kids, but the carnage it's caused by handing him over shows that even things done with the best intentions have their own costs. Kathleen said she visited her brother in jail, and he told her to forgive. Last week when talking to the doctor, she said that the room they were in could be the one Michael was tortured at, and again, because of this, she can't forgive. Now we jump back with Joel and Co to catch them making their way into a bank car park. This could be riffing on a secret location in the second game, in which he traveled to Westlake Bank and got a shotgun early.
I said this in my reaction. That looks and reminds me so much of the lower levels of that parking garage in Left 4 Dead, because you would always turn a corner, or at least most of the time, there was a very common, at least every time I played, spawn point for a witch down there. That's what it reminded me of.
Now, like the game, once you hit the main street, you're peppered by a sniper. They have the layout exactly the same, with them being at a high vantage point in a house at the end of the road. Similar to what happens here, Joel uses cars for cover, and he makes his way down to it before you take out the gunner.
Get out! Fucking sniper.
In a nod to Sam and Henry running off in the game, the pair make a break for it here, but they're almost shot when trying to escape. The game also had raiders in houses along the street, whereas this guy is just by himself. He's much older than his game counterpart, and it explains why Joel's able to get the drop on him so easily. You also see Joel looking out to a river with a bridge on it, which is riffing on the one from the Pittsburgh chapter that you had to get to. I was also wondering whether Joel was thinking, should I make a break for it? I don't think he is, but yeah, let me know below if you had that interpretation.
Nah, I didn't think that at all.
I always wondered why this guy didn't move when he saw you coming up the street. His position is clearly given away, but here we see that he's been working with Kathleen, and thus he didn't really want to vacate this spot.
Yeah, see? She was calling out for
deliberately
him.
Trying to hold them in place so it could buy Kathleen and her group time to arrive, and they then show up at this point. This whole scene riffs on the game quite a lot, and in it, Joel takes a sniper and we watch as the run truck arrives. In the show, we see the battering ram on the front being used to clear out cars, and this is something Joel touched upon last week when talking about how the roads were cleared.
Must have been some truck.
Yeah, they used to stick big-ass plows on them and clear the roads for their tanks and such.
In the game, Joel used the gun to shoot a rebel popping out the top that was throwing Molotovs. This caused him to drop it in the car, which set it alight, and this then crashed into one of the houses. From there, the infected sprung out, and this is how Sam got bit. You ended up fleeing to the tower as the infected ran to the house, and that's pretty much how the sequence ended. Here they change things up with the truck driver still crashing, but to make things even more tense, we get Kathleen holding everyone except Joel at gunpoint. She says "F them kids" and justifies murdering them by saying kids die all the time. She sees Sam as being someone who should have been left to his fate instead of costing her brother. However, fate still has a hand to play, and the truck collapses in, unleashing a terrifying horde of infected. We see one set on fire, and this is a similar...
I love that one that was just like struggling to get up. Somebody had pointed it out either in the comments or my live stream yesterday. I can't remember which, but somebody had mentioned that there was a infected that just could not get up out of the hole, and you just saw he just got one front and center, and I didn't notice it when I was watching it, but yeah, I just kept getting fucking pummeled to death.
Effect to what would happen when you hit one with a Molotov. In the game, I love this bit because Joel couldn't get hit. You're kind of just sniping away and having a bit of a laugh. Now at this point we see a big bad bloater who was first teased at all the way back in episode 2.
Yep.
So there aren't super infected that explode fungus spores on you?
Shit, I hope not.
You could also hear the creature growling under the cracks in the floor last week, and this makes a really big entrance. In the game, he actually faced off against the first one in the school scene during build section, but I'm kind of glad we got the greatest love story ever told instead.
Yeah, me too.
They kept his arrival for this scene. In the game, it was a one-hit kill if they grabbed you, and bloaters would actually stick their fingers in your mouth and rip your head apart.
And that's what happens to Perry, man.
Seeing this happen in the background, I was like, stop, they went there. Although Ellie is hiding out, we can see a child clicker crawl to the SUV to get her. Child clickers don't appear in the game, and I'm guessing that this was used because it later kills Kathleen, and she was very much saying how kids didn't really matter. Henry and Sam are pinned down like what happens in the original work, but Ellie saves them and they make a run for it. She stabs them using her knife, and this is also a tactic that she busts out in the source material. As we said, Kathleen gets killed, and in an eerie final shot, we see the infected running towards the city. They likely destroy the resistance as they lie asleep in their beds, and I doubt that even Dorothy would want to get back to Kansas, eh? In the game, Henry said Pittsburgh at Skeleton Cruise at night, which is why they opted to move out then, and I can imagine it being a similar thing set up in Kansas. This means it's going to be a very short-lived revolution, and because Kathleen couldn't forgive, it's led to this downfall. Now the group make it to a motel, and we see Henry is really shaken up by it, but the kids have got through it okay. Anyway, the conversation in the game is a lot more lighthearted, with them talking about Tommy before moving on to the group not showing up.
It was Tommy's birthday, and that's all he wanted to do is just rent 2 Harleys and drive cross country.
Oh, man. I could die happy if I could just ride one around the block.
Yeah, this was such a fun, cute scene.
It was good. It was real good.
Good? Can you believe this guy? Come on, man, give me details. Describe it.
You know what? You two deserve a little privacy.
No, Ellie. This isn't just any regular motorcycle, okay? You get on that bad boy, you feel that engine? Nothing like it.
Oh, yeah? How would you know?
Seen it in my dreams.
Okay.
I don't think anyone from my group is gonna show up.
In the show, Joel invites Henry and Sam to join them on their quest to find Tommy, and this will give them a new fresh start. The game also changes things slightly, and with Sam, he was clearly wrestling with what would happen now that he'd been bit.
Is everything all right?
Yeah, everything's fine.
Well, have a good night.
How is it that you're never scared?
Who says that I'm not?
What are you scared of?
Scorpions are pretty creepy.
Scorpions.
Being by myself. I'm scared of ending up alone.
Yeah.
What about you?
Those things out there. What if the people are still inside? What if they're trapped in there without any control of their body?
Is it still you inside?
I'm scared of that happening to me.
Okay. First of all, we're a team now. Okay, we're gonna help each other out. And second, they might still look like people, but that person is not in there anymore.
Now in the show, Ellie and Sam sit about reading comics, and he eventually asks if she's ever scared. We get a scene that riffs on the game with the answers being written down and shared between the two, whereas in that it was a conversation. Like the previous cutscene, Ellie says she's scared of being alone, and this plays into a character moment that we'll talk about in the spoiler section. Sam also asks if it's still you inside when you turn, and he then shows her his bite. This is unlike the game, as in that he keeps it to himself. However, he does pull up his trouser leg to reveal it like what we get here. Ellie shows just how naive she is because she believes her blood can cure him, and it very much plays in her believing that she is the vaccine. She sort of has a messiah complex and believes she can heal the sick, but this of course doesn't end up working out. It's very much a kind of, I don't know, kid's view of science.
Yeah,
gives
that's
Ellie
kind of how
a cruel dose of reality in the harsh light of day. In the game, Henry, Joel, and Ellie sleep in the same room, and when she went to get him up, she discovered he'd been turned. We see Sam's back first, like what we get here, but Ellie spent the entire night with him while still likely took over. Both the scenes play out in a similar way, and I'll drop them side by side so you can see the differences, as well as what they kept.
Damn, that smells good.
Good morning.
Where's Sam?
I'll let him sleep in for once.
Oh.
Well, if you want him to join us, you can go wake his ass up.
Sam?
Hey.
What the hell? Shit, he's turning! That's my fucking brother! Screw it!
Shit!
Ellie, are you all right?
Oh my god.
Sam?
Oh no.
Sam?
Henry? Ellie, stay there. Henry?
What have you done?
Easy, easy, easy. Henry, give me the gun. Henry, give me the gun. What did I do? I'm gonna get that gun from you, okay? Whoa, okay, easy.
This is your fault.
Give me the gun. Give me the gun, Henry. This is nobody's fault, Henry.
It's all your fault.
Henry! Henry, no!
Oh my god.
Now they both end in Sam and Henry's death, and that closes out another entry with some big characters passing away. I think every episode except 4's had one big death in it, and the first had Sarah, Tess was in the second, Bill and Frank in 3, and now Henry and Sam. Here,
4 is really a part 1 to this one, I'd
we know
say.
that Henry gave up Michael in order to save his brother. He still had to kill him though once he became infected, and it shows how dark and bleak this world actually is.
Oh my god, too. I was just thinking that connection of fate he just mentioned made me think of what Kathleen, of all people, has said. At the end, she ended up right in a weird, sick way. And everything Henry was doing was just, trying to avoid his fate rather than facing it.
Even if you save someone, this can still be taken away from you, and this all can happen at a moment's notice. Outside, they bury the yellow car. Smacked you there, mate. Outside, they
What the
bury their
fuck?
bodies, and Ellie creates a makeshift gravestone using Sam's board. In the game, you
What was
actually come
that?
across a child's grave, and it's just as depressing as it is here.
That's too small of a grave.
Forgot to leave that stupid robot on his grave. What should I do with it?
Ellie,
What? I want to talk about it.
no.
Why not?
How many times do we need to go over this? Things happen, and we move on.
It's just...
That's enough.
You're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and this is 100% flipped in the show.
Let's get to Tommy's.
Ellie, of course, forgot to put the robot toy on it, but here she remembers to drop Sam's board. She writes, "I'm sorry," and clearly deals with the survivor's guilt of the situation. Ellie is still alive from her bite, whereas Sam isn't, and her actions the night before potentially also cost Henry's life. They pass it out, and in the moment that riffs on their silhouettes in the credits, we close out with them journeying out west. Now for the next part of the video, we're going to be talking about game spoilers and things that will probably ruin the story for you if you haven't played them.
Go, run away.
Why the f
Run away if
played The
you
Last of
haven't
Us?
played
We're
it.
5 episodes
Or
deep and you
the
still
second
haven't
one.
f***ing played it? Anyway, the two characters that I think reflect Joel here are Kathleen and Henry, who both end up doing bad things out of love. Kathleen's love ends up turning her into a bitter and vengeful person, and in the end, this dooms her entire town.
Okay, game 2 spoilers. So if you haven't played the second game, you've watched enough of the video. Thank you. Leave a like, comment. But we're in the spoiler section now, so I want to talk about this. So Kathleen, somebody very important to her, dies, and she goes on a tunnel vision murder spree of revenge. And two things. We'll get to the other one. Part 2, Ellie goes through the exact same thing. And it's something I didn't think about as well. Her fear of being alone. In the end, how is Ellie at the end of the game? Alone. Oh my God. My heart is exploding right now. Fuck.
This could be similar to how Joel was affected by Sarah, and his attack at the end dooms humanity because we don't get a vaccine.
And then there's
I know
this.
people kind of go back and forth over whether the vaccine would have worked or not, but the second game does kind of spell out that there was a pretty big chance. Now, how is Henry like Joel? Well, Henry's actions to save Sam ended up leading to Michael's death. He put the life of the person he loved above all else, and this could be reflected in Joel's actions to kill the Fireflies at the end. That's more of a... well, they're both pretty tenuous, but I thought I'd just bring it up here in case they end up going that route in the series. I'm pretty sure they will at this point because so far it's been almost identical to the game, bar the Bill and Frank episode and the odd change here and there. It's also possible that Kathleen is somewhat of a mirror of Abby, as both are avenging someone that was murdered, which eventually leads to them losing a lot.
See, I disagree with that point of view. Because she doesn't burn people down. She specifically only gives a shit about Joel. Ellie, once Joel dies, murders so many people. Or like her soul is lost. After this, Abby's like, everything's fine and dandy until fucking Jason Ellie Voorhees just comes a hunting for her.
Now, Ellie saying she's scared of ending up alone could possibly play into the next episode, which will potentially take them to Jackson. I haven't seen the trailers yet, as we make these videos before they release, but I'm guessing that the next entry centers around them reuniting with Tommy. In the game, Joel pretty much wanted to fleece Ellie off to him, and she ended up running away for a bit. Joel and Tommy headed out to get her, which is when they came across raiders, but eventually they managed to catch back up to her. Joel then promised to take her to the Fireflies himself, and I can imagine that basically being the plot of the next entry. Now, as for my thoughts on this one, I did think it was a solid way to build off last week, and even though I knew it was coming, the Henry and Sam deaths were still devastating. Just leaves that feeling of hopelessness that The Last of Us is built upon, and you can see how the characters become completely jaded and self-centered. No one's really going to look after them, so they have to look after themselves, and thus they push themselves into this one-track mind based solely on surviving. This is what Joel had, but Ellie has made him realize that there's more to life than just making it through the day-to-day. Bill, of course, discovered this, and it's very much layered throughout the entire season.
Yep.
I think Henry and Sam was spot on as well, as you couldn't really ask for more accurate adaptations of them. Yeah, no, Sam wasn't deaf, but he played the part of a kid trying to be a kid in the apocalypse really well, and it did provide a devastating ending that I think a lot of people are going to be shocked by. I actually found myself almost being like Joel at this point, as the guys just put Tess's death at the back of his mind and kept going, and that's what I do once they ended up dead. These characters, they have big passings, and I'm like, well, just gotta keep surviving, I guess. Can't stand around and feel for them. It really shows how well crafted that this series is, but I do have some faults with it. I kind of felt like Melanie Lynskey was a bit weak, and personally, I don't know why anyone would really follow her. I get the whole brother dying put her in charge, but she didn't really come across someone that could command others. Just a nitpick for the episode, and yeah, if you disagree, that's fine. Yeah, let me know below.
I'm fine with
I
it.
hope you enjoyed the breakdown either way, and obviously I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, so make sure you comment below. We are running a competition right now and giving away Wakanda Forever to 3 subscribers on the 15th of February, and all you have to do to be win the chance of...
Go subscribe, comment, do the stuff, win a Blu-ray. Another stellar breakdown. I'm not going to talk about this one too much because I did talk about what I wanted to talk about already throughout the whole thing. Fantastic breakdown. Love it. Love the thematic details and just these little background nuggets. That one little book, that kid's book that was just sitting in the background, I would have never paid that any mind. And you were able to connect that to the story. Well done. This whole section I had recently gone through, so it was fresh in my mind throughout the entire run of the episode, but it still kept me on my toes. It's one thing to be playing in a video game and then seeing it in a live action like this, and they blew me away with this episode, even though I knew the sniper thing was coming, even though I knew the wave of infected was coming, even though I knew Henry and Sam were not going to make it out of this episode. It was still thrilling, engaging, and just well executed to all ends. But guys, I want to know what you thought. Were there any Easter eggs that you guys caught that were not brought up here? If so, drop them in the comments. I hope you enjoyed the reaction though. If you did, please leave a like, drop a comment, and subscribe if you're not already. And make sure to subscribe to Heavy Spoilers if you're not already. And before we go, I want to shout out our channel legends. Manny Sherritt, Ryan, Karen, Jason Coleman, Philly Vane, York, Corey Scott, Margaret Grace, Melita, Robert Aguiano, Reva McGann, Jeffrey Hale, M. Sephiroth, Jake Cantrell, Amy Becca, Josh Lee, and Aaron Myers. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. That's it for this video, guys. I'll see you all next week with the next episode. Take care, everybody.